We're going to be on page 64. It takes a little break from Thessalonians, obviously getting into the traditional Easter verses, very familiar. We probably wouldn't even have to read any analysis or anything. It's pretty straightforward. But there may be somebody out there that's lost out there listening today. So definitely things we can get out of this, things that I thought about, things that hadn't crossed my mind as I was reading some of these verses. But I'm one that I like statistics and polls and things like that, and they always have polls around Christmas and Easter, Christian polls and things. And I saw one that 63% of our country identifies as a Christian. I mean, when you think about that, that's probably not true, because if that was the case, a lot of things would be different if the majority of the country was a Christian. But out of that number, the 63% that said they were Christians, only 37% were going to be going to church on Easter Sunday. So that should tell you, even of that number, nearly cut that number in half, those are the ones going to be going to church. And, here in the next hour or so, didn't know, figured we possibly could have had somebody in our Sunday school class. People that don't normally come, today would be a day. It's the number one day that people attend church. So we need to be just kind of cognizant of people that walk through these doors and welcome them, and just be the Christian that God's called us to be, because, if somebody's lost, there's never a better time than to be saved than today. So let's just remember that as Brother Joey brings his message later. But the title of the lesson is Risen. We'll be in Matthew chapter 28. We're going to read the whole chapter here. The lesson skips a few verses, but I'm not going to skip those verses because I think they're very important, just like the whole Bible is. But kind of, always does it understand in the context, kind of sets it up so we know what's going on. But it's talking about Judas here. It says he had first-hand knowledge of Jesus walking on water, feeding the masses, and healing the sick. Yet Judas had set all this aside for 30 pieces of silver in pursuit of his own personal agenda. Again, everything we're going to be talking about is going to be very familiar to us in here. We know these stories. We know it very good. But you think about it, all these humans and how they acted human-like, and Jesus is the only perfect being. I mean, Judas, one that walked with him, one that knew everything that Jesus had been teaching, turned him in over some money. I can't tell you the exact amount of what that would be today. I was reading last night, and there's different analysis. Some think a few hundred, some think a few thousand, but regardless, it wasn't like he turned him in over millions and billions of dollars. He turned him in over a few measly dollars, and it wouldn't have been okay even if it was all the money in the world, but still just a little bit of money, and he fell short there, right? And we see even today in our world, money, people pick money over Christ sometimes. It goes on, talking about Pontius Pilate, says that he knew Jesus to be innocent of the charges, but appealed to the crowd for action. Jesus had faithfully served and ministered to some in this crowd over the past 3 years, but the crowd opted for the release of a common criminal. Again, I think Pontius Pilate is an interesting character in the Bible. I don't know why, but I've always just been drawn to that part of the story as to, I can't tell you if he was saved or if he wasn't saved, but still, he kind of had the knowing of, this man hasn't done anything, right? But still, what did he do? He appealed to the masses. He did what the people there wanted him to do. They said, crucify him. We don't want, give us this criminal. Put him back on the streets, but crucify Jesus. Again, somebody he knew he was innocent, yet he followed the crowd. Still like in our times today. When we know right from wrong, the world I'm speaking of, we know, and I'm just using this example again, we know it's factual. There's two genders. There's a boy and a girl. Yet the world will say, well, maybe not. Maybe there is something we don't know about. Not even using their brain. Pilate could have said, I'm releasing him. But he failed to what the people there wanted him to do. We don't need to do that. Then it goes on. The Roman soldiers mocked Jesus by putting a crown of thorns on his head. And it says, while Jesus hung on the cross, the elders and scribes encircled him and challenged him to save himself. they indicated that if he would simply come down from the cross, then they too would believe. Right? They mocked him, they beat him, plucked his beard. It's just unfathomable. You know, we were showing Kelson the Easter story in a cartoon version for a kid. And even in a cartoon version, it just kind of gets you as it's showing, you know, it's got Jesus purple and beat up, and you just think, we can't even fathom what they really did to him. But he's hanging there. You know, the people there, they say, you know, get down off that cross. You know, you're the Son of God. You're the King. Do it. They didn't have true faith. If they did, they would have just believed everything he said. But they wanted to see it with their own eyes, you know. And Jesus definitely performed miracles and things for people to see as he's walking along. But they didn't have any faith. They didn't really believe. You know, you go with the two criminals hanging beside him. You have one that truly believed. Jesus tells him, you know, you'll be with me today. You have the other one saying, being selfish, save us. Get us down from here, right? You know, it's really kind of shows us exactly how our world is today. That good and evil. Christ, Satan. You know, who we going to fall to? But the lesson says the distress found in the events we've just talked about were about to be reversed. And we know what's all about to happen. But maybe somebody out there doesn't know. And you know, ultimately, a lot of people come on Christmas. A lot of people come on Easter. But really today, you think about it, what we celebrate is him being rose again is ultimately everything that put everything, it was the glue, right? If this wouldn't happen, if he wouldn't have rose again, everything he said would have been a lie. We wouldn't have had an opportunity at salvation. But he could have took himself off that cross. He could have did whatever he wanted, but he had to die knowing that's the only way we were going to have an opportunity. He died covering every sin that could even be thought of, right? So going on into the verses here, let's start out Matthew 28, verses 1 through 4. It says, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him the keepers did shake and became as dead men. So, you know, it talks about the Marys going down there. They were going to anoint Jesus' body with spices. You know, Matthew uses they wanted to see the sepulchre. They wanted to, you know, see Jesus' tomb. But I do think about it. They were going with spices. And again, sometimes we as humans sometimes can't understand certain things. But I kind of think they were going there for a good purpose. But why were they going there with that? When he had told them over and over, I'm not going to be here. You know, I'm going to rise again. You know, but they go down there. It says there's a great earthquake, and an angel of the Lord appears. It says he approached the tomb and rolled back the stone that was covering its entrance. So imagine you're those guards there, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit. But think about that. You've guarded this. It's, you know, a few days have passed, and you're thinking, well, looks like our time here is about to be done. You know, he didn't rise again, like he said, and then boom, earthquake happens. That stone's moved away. It says Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to the tomb of Jesus to anoint his body, but what they experienced that morning changed them forever. Let's just keep going here. Verse 5 and 6 says, and the angel answered and said unto the women, fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where the Lord lay. I kind of circled in verse 6 where it says, as he said. He's risen. It has that, you know, comma there, as he said. He told you he was going to do this. Why are we shocked? And, you know, we're about to see what they're going to be told to do. But he told them there, you know, fear not ye. Imagine that moment. Even though you'd been told about it, and we know, we see time and time again how many times Jesus told people things, and it still just took them by shock when it would happen, almost like it caught them off guard. He's telling them, fear not. He's not here. Kind of like in our world today, we get tore up, and we see things that are just so ungodly. We need to remember that, though. Kind of like this moment. Fear not. You know, God's got it all under control. But it says the angel offered factual evidence. The two phrases, he is not here and he is risen, represent the heart of Easter and of the Christian faith. Without the resurrection, we are hopeless and helpless. But the angel invited them to see the place where the Lord lay. I want to read something here. I think I've read this before, but it's probably been a while. It says, the greatest man in history was named Jesus. Had no servants, yet they called him master. Had no degree, yet they called him teacher. Had no medicines, yet they called him healer. Had no army, yet kings feared him. Won no military battles, yet he conquered the world. And he committed no crime, yet they crucified him. He was buried in a tomb, yet he lives today. You know, some true words there. Don't know who wrote that. But you know, you think about that. Our world craves on education, institutions, money, things like that. God created every bit of it. You know, He didn't need those things for Him to be the most powerful man, powerful thing ever in this world. We need to just remember that we don't need anything that this world has to offer. We just need Jesus. And if we put our true faith in Him and just rely on Him and stop looking to the world for answers, our life is going to definitely be better. There's no doubt about it. Verse 7 says, and go quickly and tell His disciples that He is risen from the dead, and behold, He goeth before you into Galilee. There shall see Him. Lo, I have told you. So they're told to go and tell. The message never changed. When He was walking on this earth, He told them, let's go and reach as many people as we can. Let's go city to city. Y'all need to go city to city as I leave. What are the Mary's being told here? Go and tell them. You know, I think it's funny. It's not, you know what I'm saying. The fact of that even though they should have known, they all should have known Jesus was going to rise again. He was going to get out of that tomb. The two Marys are still told, go and tell them. Go and tell them, right? Mark 16:10 says that they were mourning and weeping. Why are they in mourning? Why are they weeping? You know, not that they didn't believe in Jesus, not that they, weren't true believers, but they were just like human beings, and despite Him telling them, they doubted. They had fell short just in that sense. Think about it. If we were told something 1,000 times, and the person that was telling us that had came through every time of anything else they had told us, we would probably believe what they're telling us. They saw Jesus do things that nobody else could do, and He tells them, I'm going to be crucified. My own people are going to turn against me. They're going to hate us. They're going to kill me. But don't worry, because I'm going to be back. And they still didn't believe it. They believed on Him. They believed things He said, but it was almost just like the falling short of the human of why were they in mourning? Why were they in weeping? Matthew 26:32 says, but after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Verse 7 in Matthew there tells them that Jesus is going to be with them in Galilee. He had already told them that before. Again, everything that He's saying just coming into is happening. Going on, Matthew 28:8-10, it says, and they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy, and did run to bring His disciples word. And as they went to tell His disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, all hail. And they came and held Him by the feet and worshipped Him. Then said Jesus unto them, be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. So, Jesus met them. They held Him by His feet. It says this was a common act of submission in the first century, but secondly, they worshipped Him. It says we are afforded the chance to bow our hearts before Jesus, to acknowledge that He has risen, and to obey His commands. It says many of us long for purpose, and we want to do things that have meaning, and purpose and meaning can be found in living according to the truth God gives us in His Word. We always hear things of, what's my purpose in life? I'm trying to find myself. I'm trying to, we can figure that out. That's elementary basic stuff. The purpose of all of us being here, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, the purpose of us being here is ultimately to believe on Christ and to go tell others about Him. Because in the end, whether somebody thinks, well, I don't believe in Christ, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, at the end of their life, they're going to figure out real quick that there was a God. It was the God, the only God. In your life, really, your purpose was to hopefully find Him and believe on Him. And if you didn't, you failed. Think about it. People set goals. I'm a goal setter. I do it. People like missions. But ultimately, there's only one thing you've got to accomplish in this life that we hope to accomplish, and that is to believe on Christ, salvation. That's the one. That's the only thing you got to do. Just believe on Him. So simple. And it's not just saying, "Well, I believe on Him. Okay, good deal. Now I'm gonna go to Zaxby's and get my meal. I believed on Him." No, you got to really have that belief. And you're gonna know. You're gonna know when it's here. That's all you got to do is believe. Think about it. Always, I use the thief on the cross as a deathbed salvation story. I've heard people say, "Well, you can't have a deathbed salvation." Well, the Bible clearly tells us that when Jesus is on the cross. It can happen. Yeah. Guy, we don't know what he lived like before, but obviously a bad life, made some bad choices. Hey, guess what? When you want to put it in modern times, he's like a prisoner. Kind of like we have prisoners in our country, and sometimes we look very bad and down on those people. Guess what? They're a human being that God created. And that guy on that cross, he believed. It doesn't tell us that he hopped down off that cross and did, the ABC, some prayer. He believed, and God knew that man right there had belief. That's all you got to do is believe. And you're going to know it. You're going to have a changed heart. Like I said, I should have had this up. The lesson skips these verses, but I want to read it here because I think it can take away. We're not just going to skip these few verses here. All right, so we're going on to verse 11. Read through 15. It says, "Now when they were going, behold, some of the watch came into the city and showed unto the chief priests all the things that were done. And when they were assembled with the elders and had taken counsel, they gave large money unto the soldiers." Again, here we go, talking about that money and bribery. "Saying, Ye, his disciples, came by night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will persuade him and secure you. So they took the money and did as they were taught. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day." So those soldiers, right, that were there, hey, it didn't take 2,000 years for bribery to start happening. They're getting bribed right then. They say, "Look, this is what happened." They knew what had happened. Those soldiers knew, but they're getting paid off already to silence the gospel. It's no different than today. In our world, not God's world, but in our world, money talks. And when you can get into the back pocket of somebody, they start changing their ways in our world. It don't work that way in God's world, the world He desired. But ultimately, we see no different that how money can turn into corruption, and people will do things for money. They took a bribe here. Think about it. Those two guys had the opportunity to be some of the most powerful witnesses. Imagine if they say, "Look, we didn't believe in him. We were guarding his tomb, and he sure enough, that stone was rolled away. He came out." But they didn't do that. They took the money and ran, right? I didn't want to skip those verses because I think that's an important part. A lot of people will miss that. How many people know that bribery took place right there in the Easter story? Going on, verse 16 says, "Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee, into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him." Listen to this. "But some doubted." They see him, his nail-scarred hands. They see him, and they still doubt. It says, "And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen." Just like we said there, or like the verses tell us, that some doubted. When somebody thinks that they're not good enough, or they think they've did too many bad things and God can't help them, hey man, the 11 disciples that were there were left, that he walked with, he talked with, taught them everything, told them things. They saw him crucified. They see him now back in front of their presence. What else do you need? And they still doubted, some of them. right? They fell short just like we fall short. They were human beings. It says some of those present responded more slowly while others quickly believed. No different than our world today. Just like people we talk to, we can talk to somebody 1 or 2 times, boom, they get it, right? Or we could talk to people hundreds of times and they still are struggling. When you think about it, we don't need to get discouraged because we can look right here and say, hey man, these people saw Jesus, saw everything he did, and they still, had some doubts. They were still falling short. So we don't need to lose faith on people. We don't need to let it get us down. We got to put it in God's hands. So, it says the primary command is to teach and make disciples. And where does it say? All nations. He didn't say, only Israel has an opportunity here, or only the Middle East. He don't point out the United States. All nations, everywhere. It was his desire that everybody that walks this earth knows him, right? And I was watching a video about natural law. Somebody's like, well, how can you define what natural law is? And it's like, God gives us a conscience here. We should know what's right and wrong. If somebody just went and pulled out a gun and shot down 100 people, how hard do you think it is? Are we going to find anybody that goes, that was a good thing to do? In reality, probably not, because our mind tells us that is not a good thing to do. That's not right. God gives you that. We know right and wrong. But the longer we're in this world, our brain gets perverted and we just start letting it influence us. And you either pick God or you pick the world. So, I think it's verse 20. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. Christ tells them there, I'm going to be with you always. Every step of the way, I'm going to be with you. I may not physically be here like I am right now, but I'm going to be with you. Holy Spirit will be with you. You just have to reach it. You've got to believe. You've got to have the desire to want to do work for Him. He's always with us. Everything else is going to fall into place. Took a picture of this too. I thought, well, this is pretty good. We can talk about this. Listen to this. It says, a rod in my hands will keep away a wild animal, but a rod in Moses' hands will part the sea. Depends on whose hands it's in. A slingshot in my hand is a kid's toy, but a slingshot in David's hand is a mighty weapon. Depends on whose hands it's in. 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread in my hands is a couple of fish sandwiches, but 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread in God's hand will feed thousands. Depends on whose hands it's in. Nails in my hands might produce a birdhouse. Nails in Jesus Christ's hands will produce salvation for the entire world. Depends on whose hands it's in. And as you see now, it depends on whose hands it's in, so put your concerns, your fears, your families, and your relationship in God's hands, because it depends on whose hands it's in. A lot of times in our life, we like to do what we want to do. Or we like to try to make it, I can handle it. I can handle it. When sometimes, you just got to give up and say, okay. Now, give you a crazy story. Yesterday, driving down back from Hiram, and Kelson's just pitching a fit. Just pitching a fit. And, I guess it's a mama-daddy thing. Y'all can probably talk. I feel like us dads are just like, relaxed. And mama's over here panicking. And I'm telling Hannah, it's okay. It's not okay, Connor. It's not okay. She's not going to sleep good tonight. And I'm like, at this point, you just got to give up, man. It's over. The nap time's passed. It ain't happening now. We just got to, put our faith somewhere that God's going to take care of it. Kelson didn't wake up all night. So guess what? She just wore her little self out. So, you know what? God took care of that. As crazy and funny as that sounds, things like that seem so minor, to God, though, it's all in His hands, right? He'll take care of things like that. I did write 2 things down. Jesus told us here in these words, He told His disciples that were walking with Him many times about things that were to come. And guess what? They all happened. Think about that. If you believe that Jesus rose again, hit on what Joey always says, why do we think it's so taboo that He's not coming back? That He's coming back. Why do we think that is? Why do we get confused? Because He told us He was going to die on the cross and raise again. He did that. He tells us He's coming back. Everything He did has happened. He's never been a liar. He's never been wrong. He's never misguided us. He's not the author of confusion. He told us He was preparing a place and coming back. He told us that. Do we believe it? We all may believe it here, but maybe not just a lost person, but a Christian out there that believes some things, has a basic understanding, but just ain't where they need to be. Yeah. Hey, do you think He just rose again for nothing and to say, okay, everybody, there was everybody's opportunity for salvation, good deal? No. He wanted us, during this time that He's gone right now, to reach as many people as possible and to tell more people about Him. I wrote this down. Joey may have saw this already. I saw it last night. But, we talk about how our world, we just like to corrupt things, Me and Mr. Funk's talked about this, and it's not meaning anything bad, but y'all know what I'm saying. But we can search all through this Bible, and there's not going to be anywhere that says y'all need to have this committee and this committee and this committee and this committee in the Bible. It's not going to say that. We create things like that. We make things more confusing than they need to be. We make salvation more confusing than it needs to be. Institutions, schools, governments, churches, we've messed things up and we've just got away from what the Bible tells us to do. And so I saw this. But, our own convention, they have a ethics, religious, and whole commission where they try to bring peace to everybody. Well, somebody that leads that, I didn't write his name down, but he praised the Supreme Court Justice nomination. He said, despite us having differences, it's a history-making moment that we've saw here in this country today. And it's like, that's somebody that says they're a Baptist, that is praising somebody that says they're for abortion. Let's use our brain. Let's use that natural law. What's right about that? There's nothing right about it. And Joey said this last week, and I've said it. There's not going to be a Baptist section, a Methodist section in heaven. I believe there's going to be people of different denominations if they have that belief. Now, if they don't believe that Jesus was born of a virgin and He died and rose again, and they don't believe the basic principle of salvation, they're not going to be there. But I believe there will be different denominations. However, we need to get away from all that, and we just need to study what the Scripture says, and we need to tell people that. Because believe me, there's probably some good Methodist churches out there that believe right. There's probably some good Baptist churches. There's probably some bad ones in there of both too. Now, there's certain denominations that I can tell you that absolutely don't believe what we're talking about here today. But ultimately, we're here on this Easter morning celebrating that He rose again. But He is coming back. And as these doors open up here in a few minutes, and we're going to see some faces, we may not see all the time. Hey, let's not go beat them over the head, Let's give them the opportunity to, hey, you're here in the Lord's house. Let's represent what a Christian is to be. A Christian's not here to accept sin and just turn the other head, but at the same point in time, they're here. Let's let God do His work. God's going to give Joey the words to say. And you know what? If their heart's pricked enough and they want to believe on Him, that's going to be the best decision they've ever made. Right? So, again, simple verses. Got off Thessalonians, but verses we know that are very familiar to us. But if you're out there lost, there's never a better time than right now than to turn and believe on Him. You might got anything. Mr. Funk's laughing. Does he or does he not?
I was thinking of when you said if you come down from the cross, people always want to see a miracle. We have that today in churches, somebody healed people and all this nonsense. And the point of it is, as I told Pastor, I think it was Wednesday night, think of all the miracles God did in Egypt. Did they believe because they saw the miracles? Did they believe because Christ went through and He made tons and tons of miracles? There's always one more miracle. If He came down off the cross, the guy probably still wouldn't have believed. See, because that's not how you believe. I think we've all done that in life. God, if you just do this, or something like that. Does it make it any difference to us? No, God probably doesn't want to do it because it's best for us.
Yep.
You know, we always ask for things amiss sometimes in our life. God's always trying to draw us closer to Him. You know, and I think that there's just so much in the Bible. And yesterday, and I'll be quite clear, I was going through the channels for a minute, and there was a story, and it was about Easter or whatever. Christ was talking, and he was talking, and it, you know, it's a Hollywood movie. So I watched it for maybe up to a minute. Within a minute, there had to be at least 20 blasphemies, and then that 1 minute, I was listening to who Christ really is and how, you know, it's like human beings try to act like who He is, not the God of the Bible. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm tempted. I like this woman, but I won't do it. You know, that's not God. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we make Hollywood movies. You know, and we think that somehow that's reality, and that's not the God of the Bible.
Yep.
Right. Amen.
All right.
Can I make a brief announcement before we dismiss? If you notice the basket of Easter eggs on the front, that's for Annie Armstrong Easter offering, which goes to missions. So if you want to put some money in Annie Armstrong, you put it in the egg, you put it in the plate, you give it to Marie, whatever, but we'll know that goes to missions to Annie Armstrong.
All right. David, do you want to close us?
Father, we say thank you so much for this wonderful day, Lord. The day, Lord, that you came out of the grave and you conquered things that none of us were capable of doing. Lord, you conquered sin, death, and hell, Lord, by dying on that cross and raising again. Lord, we can never thank you enough, Lord. And Lord, there's so many in this world that have not come to grip with that. We ask that you just help us to be the light, to show that to them, Lord. And Lord, to make disciples, it's and Lord, just be a better Christian for you. Thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity to go to this church service. Lord, let your will be done in whatever way you see fit.